Welcome to Vator Box, the show where we rate your pitches. I'm Bambi Francisco, and with me today, as always, is Ezra Roizen. He's a digital media investment banker, and our guest host is Drew Curtis. He's founder of Fark.com, which is an aggregator of strange and humorous news, or as Drew would say, think, what if the Daily Show ran the Drudge Report? Right, Drew? Did I get that right?
Yep. Somebody said that. It kind of works, so we'll go with it.
Kind of works, and Drew's going to be our Simon Cowell of the day, or at least our comic relief for this show.
I'll give it a shot anyway. Can we do fart jokes? Is that all right?
Yeah. Today we're actually going to look. We're going to look at Fark first. Surprise! Actually, we're not going to do that. We're going to look at two companies, as always: Hubdub, which is a news aggregation site that harnesses the wisdom of the crowds, and Crush TV, which is a video social network for and by college students. And we're going to try to cover some questions. What's the utility? What does this company grow up to be? Does this company, or will it make money? And who are the competitors, big public companies or small companies? So let's start with Hubdub.
What's all the Hubdub, bub? If you're a news junkie and you like a good bet now and again, Hubdub could be the website you frequent most. It allows customers to bet, for fun, not money, on the outcomes of real news stories. Hubdub participants receive an initial 1,000 Hubdub dollars, play money that works only on the site.
Success or a dud?
Well, I mean, Drew's our resident expert on news aggregation.
I actually don't know anything about it.
Yeah, well, if this guy's the wisdom of crowds, yours is sort of the not wisdom of crowds. So what are your thoughts on betting on news?
I don't know. I hope that'll work out pretty well. I think didn't Pud try this with F Company back in the late '90s or so? It seemed to me like they gave up on that after a while, just because people were reading the news. But maybe that's the original draw. I completely disagree on the wisdom of crowds. They're pretty dumb. Crowds are generally horny, hungry, and bored. And if you cut them loose, you're going to end up with pornography and monkeys throwing stuff.
But there's okay.
Which, if you watch the nightly news, you'll notice there's quite a bit of it.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess you wouldn't be using this site. I mean, it's interesting that you can kind of pose create your own polls, and people are really into that instant polls. So, I mean, I could see it as somewhat useful for me trying to find out whether, if somebody writes about Fark, and maybe create a poll and say, is Fark going to be a successful company? You already are. But sort of create a poll around that. I think that's the way people are using it.
I mean, I think, is the incentive of being on the leaderboard enough to keep people actively engaged in something over a long period of time?
I would say probably not, just based on, I mean, it's good enough to keep some people involved. I mean, for example, we've got on our site where people submit, there's a ranking and you can see who submitted the most articles, but in general, that's such a very small percentage of our audience. Most people are very passive. They want to come, they want to read, they want to leave. Right. They don't really want to interact at all.
Well, your incentive is like beer? How do you?
Yeah, beer is a good one, yeah. No, actually, it's for ours, it's the humor, just come away with a gut laugh, basically.
Yeah.
But
what does this company grow up to be?
I think this company needs, on one hand, voting on stories is, there's people out there who do that sort of in the social media side, voting on a story because it's interesting and other people to see it. This is more of a voting from a predictive market standpoint. If I vote this thing one way or the other, will or won't happen, or will be successful or won't, or create a poll. I don't know. I can't think of an established company that's basically been able to do that. There's that one sort of predictive market company that's in the Midwest that basically has made, I think a decent-sized business in that, but they're not by any means a sort of a top 1,000 traffic website. So I think the trick becomes these guys probably need to add something else in order to make a really big property.
I see it as sort of a feature. We did this a lot when I used to work at MarketWatch. We used to create polls around our story, and we'd have a poll next to it. But I'm not sure you'd be drawn to a site just to look at everybody, the wisdom of the crowds on every question everybody has. I was on the site today, and they had one question was, will the Dow end up above 12,000?
Right.
And a bunch
like
of
will
this
gold,
century? Well, 12,000. No, by Wednesday.
By Wednesday?
No. Yeah. So, or will the gold market? Will gold end up over 500? I certainly would not be looking to the crowd to help me determine, whether I should buy certain stocks.
Yeah, well, I mean, and crowds aren't necessarily right either. I've noticed that ESPN is running something with the NCAA tournament where they've got the voting percentages on who thinks which teams will win each individual game. I guarantee you nobody's going to get those right. If you fill out a bracket, like with whatever everybody picks, you're going to have a disaster on your hands.
I think it's a feature. I think people could, there is some interesting aspect in certain cases. I think if they could basically really get sort of the survey thing, instant survey thing down. Maybe there's applications on other sites and ways of basically integrating other places. I don't know if it's that feature, content feature in and of itself as a destination as a big company.
I don't know either.
Doesn't feel like a huge company.
Making money, it looks like it could be an advertising-based model.
I'm
not sure unless they're going to be licensing their polling, and I'm not quite sure that's something that anybody will really license.
Well, internet polls in particular are notoriously wrong, so.
It could be fun. It could be fun. I think it's an interesting feature. I think they need to figure out a way to leverage that across other places, because I'm not sure that in and of itself makes a company.
Competitors, big and small?
Every poll on the internet is a competitor.
That's right. Polling sites,
every news site.
any news aggregator.
I mean, I think, for example, there was a funny one that I saw yesterday on some site about whether or not Slide was worth $500 million pre-money valuation, and it was just, it was a really funny poll. It was cute. They did it. And
was it on Hubdub?
It was on a different site, but it was a same kind of idea.
Sure.
And it was fun. It was a nice little additive piece of content. So maybe what these guys can do is be the widget in blogs that basically adds content, polls and content to other things, because they'd sort of nail the user experience.
Good. Well, that ends it with your good piece of advice. I actually would have to agree with you. What's your advice for the company?
My guess would be is if this works, they'll end up having to change into something else. If it ends up being a good initial draw, I don't think that's enough necessarily to keep people on board in the long term. But that's the good news about having a large audience is that once they're there, you can do other stuff with them.
That's true. One thing I did like is that their pitch was 56 seconds long, and that's always,
that was good.
That's nice. Okay, good pitch, good timing. Okay, up next is Crush TV.
A world once confined to dorm rooms and study halls has a new place to call home. Crush TV, your college connection to campus life.
Crush TV, you know what it is?
Yay! Crush TV is the place for students to share their college experience.
Let's race!
Hang out with the party crowd.
We're about to head into Club Tattoo.
This is such a sick party. We're having such a great time.
Check out what's happening in college music.
We're VIP here backstage with Danger Kitties.
Talk about the college dating experience.
How long should sex last?
All right. Okay, so clearly it is it's a video social network for and by college students, a bit like The Real World, MTV's Real World, and a bit like Girls Gone Wild, a little bit like MySpace, a little bit like Facebook. What do you think?
I think this site becomes a lot more like Girls Gone Wild than Facebook. I think people have figured out that the college audience is just a collective, active, highly engaged audience that should be studying but doesn't want to be. It's a waste of time. Is a great audience to sort of get things launched in. I just think this devolves quickly into some really crazy content, and I don't know. Maybe at the same time, I'm constantly stunned by the amount of time people will spend watching complete garbage. So if you look at MTV with people, I always look at those beach party shows with people dancing around on the sand with someone up on the stage and have no idea what's happening and click through. But clearly there's a large percentage of the population that thinks that is compelling content. So maybe there's just something I'm not seeing. Drew, what do you think?
Makes sense. I think they'll have an interesting time trying to convince people to send stuff to them rather than to YouTube or anybody else. I mean, I don't know how this works because I don't walk around taking random videos of stuff and then uploading to the internet because I got other stuff going on. But it seems to me that once you probably want to send it to where the audience is, kind of like when you want to auction something off, you put it on eBay. So if I was going to be a college student, regardless of whether or not the network was for college students or not, I'd probably stick it on YouTube anyways just to see what happens. Then again, you're not prevented from loading it anywhere else. So I mean, maybe they got a shot.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, this is the type of content that you probably would find on YouTube. But you could get lost on YouTube, and they're trying to create communities around whatever college you go to. So what's interesting, I think, is that they, similar to what we do, is they have these campus correspondents. We have that, of course, they're covering different things for Vator. But I think, as you can see, she's a correspondent, looks like.
Looks
so she's developing content. She's hitting some frat parties. She's getting some people to,
That's
get
why
their
it's like
mugs
Girls
on
Gone Wild. Isn't that all? All of those are volunteer?
I think that's a little more edgy than this. I think the objective there is probably not quite what these guys are after. I think it's probably closer to Juicy Campus is more what they're looking to do. But they
if
may
you've
get
seen
some
some of those
footage. I mean,
videos.
like I mentioned earlier, Ashley Dupree, the guy who was sitting there at Girls Gone Wild, about to pay $1 million to get some licensed content. Check the archive.
Sure.
Already had a bunch in the can.
So is that your advice for them? Get as much
get as many people doing
as
as many compromising things as possible.
And then one of them will become famous.
And then you got it.
This is not. This is this a utility? It's not a
business.
cerebral utility, but is this a utility at all? Is there a utility here?
I almost believe every person who will be on this TV station will regret 10 years later being on this TV station. Yet at the same time, for the immediately following 3 months, they'll be really cool. It's a long-term, short-term bias, selection
I just don't know
bias.
why they wouldn't put this on. Well, you said YouTube, but Facebook. I mean, not Facebook, MySpace.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're close to everything.
Yeah.
Okay, what does this company grow up to be? I know what I think.
Okay, I think this company grows up to be...
Or devolves into.
Devolves into or grows up to be... I mean, I think they're trying to basically create a frame around sort of a guided YouTube experience. So it grows up to be, a quite frightening derivative of sort of MTV or something like this that has basically college-type shows.
Right.
Yeah, I could kind of see that. I really wonder, too, whether or not they could keep it at the college level, too. I mean, I don't know how. I mean, Facebook used to do it by just accepting EDU addresses only. Maybe these guys do the same thing. But at some point, I mean, you've got a lot of critical mass issues where once your audience gets so large, people are sending stuff in all the time. You basically have to make the call. Do we actually care about what they're sending in, or do we just throw the gates wide open and let anybody put anything up there? So I don't know. I mean, I think if they're lucky, they turn into YouTube, and if they're not lucky, then they turn into Girls Gone Wild.
Yeah. And I would say the other problem is, and I have this problem across all the social networks and community sites that target an age bracket, and I call it the Logan's Run problem. You reach a certain age, you got to go to sanctuary and be killed, or whatever it is. And the issue is that you build this audience, you build this whole community that you're ejecting, and it doesn't become easier over time to keep your audience. True. It becomes more difficult.
Well, I said any teenager that's like 4 years younger than the guys that are in college, when they get there, are going to hate everything that came before them and not want any part of it.
So you got to figure out, anytime you're in a category that has an exit door for customers you've already acquired, you have a seriously built-in business model problem. And so I would not want to create an exclusive thing. If they want to say, after college you're still welcome, but if it was strictly sort of college only, that becomes a real problem because they're going to acquire these customers. And their biggest blip of acquisition is going to be earliest in the company probably, and then those people aren't going to lose.
And they're going to have to become a Girls Gone Wild.
Or
YouTube.
Exactly. I think all roads lead there.
All roads lead there.
Okay. All right. So that's it for Hubdub and Crush TV. Drew Curtis, our guest host. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah,
Thanks for providing some color. And Ezra, as always, thank you for being yourself. And I'm Bambi Francisco. We'll see you next time on Vator TV.